what we're going to talk about today really is going to be a pervasive transformation of all aspects of life and the work and the operations and the networks that connect us. So I'm very, very happy to have this quality of a panel from Microsoft to Google to Zayo to Arcadian and their leadership. And so if I could, Dan, Rick, Bill, Kevin, y'all come on up.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Well, welcome. Thank you all for agreeing to be on this panel. And Dan, I'm going to start with you. And if each of you would just kind of introduce yourselves, your company, and then we'll get into the content of the panel.
Sure.
Dan.
Well, good morning, all. Thank you for inviting us to attend. I'm Dan Davis, CEO of Arcadian Infracom. We do new long-haul backbone routes, and so as you see on the panel, we actually have some of our customers here. Our customers tend to be the hyperscalers and major carriers. So we're building new long-haul routes to create diversity and resiliency in the networks. We're building them diversely, so we tend to build out through the middle of nowhere. So we work with a lot of rural communities, tribal communities, and as a clean sheet company, we're able to use a lot of new technology without any legacy limits. And so we'll talk a little bit about AI and how that both drives our business and then enables the operations.
Rick.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Chip. Nice being here. I'm Rick Leavon. I'm the CTO for the telecom industry at Microsoft. More focused on the commercial side, essentially selling our services and our partner services to telcos to help them transform their business. Or as they say, going from telco to techco, and that's a new trend everybody likes to use. And so I focus more, I guess, on the enterprise commercial side, although I know our network team works with these two gentlemen here quite a bit, so nice to be here.
Awesome. So I'm Bill Long, Chief Product Officer at Zayo. For those of you who don't know Zayo, we're a communications infrastructure company in North America and EMEA. Primarily, big pipes, so lots of fiber, lots of waves going to high bandwidth locations.
Awesome. So Kevin Schatzkamer, I'm probably not going to add for those of you who don't know Google. But nonetheless, I work in Google Cloud and our Cloud AI and Industry Solutions organization. I lead a team that's focused on a combination of product incubation and use case incubation with customers.
Thank you for the introduction. What we're trying to do today, and as you see the makeup of the panel, Arcadian, Zayo on the network side, and then Microsoft and Google Cloud on the technology and on the AI leadership side. So I really think it's a great combination for this conversation. And as we look into the market today, what's amazing to me, ChatGPT entered, a few months ago? And you already have 100 million users. It's a pretty remarkable, if you think it took 100 years to connect 100 million people to the telephone, 20 or 30 years to connect wireless, that many subscribers. And in a 60-day period, ChatGPT had 100 million users. So it shows, on the consumer commercial side. But as we talk about the networks, tell me what you think are the best use cases. And Dan, we'll start with you and go down.
Yeah, from our perspective as a company that develops, builds and operates networks, the hardest part about what we do in building networks, our projects tend to be 500 to 1,000 miles, 150 to $300 million projects a piece. We'll have several of those moving forward at the same time. It's the right-of-way acquisition. So good example, Salt Lake to Phoenix, about 693 miles. We had 74 different permitting agencies, 2 states, a tribe, 6 municipalities, 7 counties, BLM, BIA, National Forest, and a partridge in a pear tree. It just goes on and on and on. And so there's a massive amount of data and a massive amount of rules behind each one of these permitting processes, and they interact with each other. And so those are the kind of problems or data sets that AI, we think, can help us really get our arms around how to really manage that right-of-way acquisition process. We can get later into, and there's some on the operating side that could probably speak to it better than I, on network capacity management, those kind of things. But for us, we really look at that, the development of network side as a place where AI can be very helpful.
Rick.
Yeah, those are some good use cases. There's literally thousands of use cases. We've already collected hundreds of use cases across telcos where AI could significantly transform their business. And so there's no lack of place. I really categorize them across 5 different pillars, and customer care is essentially the front door for AI within most of your organizations, right? Especially generative AI. Generative AI is ultimately very good at text, right? So natural language processing, reasoning through text, through prompts, and ultimately generating or creating net new targeted text, right? And so the contact center is just replete with text and natural language. That's the place where most of that occurs, both input, your customers calling, and of course your agents responding to. And so that's a great place to start. However, it's not the only place, right? So we have other categories around the network, as Dan mentioned. There's a tremendous opportunity. There's just so much data that's being generated across the network, across all the telemetry and all those devices, that ultimately AI can really help bring a little order to that madness, particularly because all the data tends to be very siloed. Or on operations, automating your BSS and OSS types of processes. That's another area where we see huge improvements with regards to utilizing AI to bring, again, a little order to that madness. And Microsoft has been investing big around productivity, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing in that space, which is really kind of extending or infusing ChatGPT-like capability across all the applications that you use on a daily basis. And then lastly, what I'm most excited about is really how can we help telcos generate new revenues, create new products, or transform existing products, and I'll touch on that in a bit as well.
Yeah, no, I think obviously the best use cases are the easiest use cases. So in a lot of ways, we've been using ML for a long time with things like churn management. But being able to take those use cases and apply another level of intelligence on top of it is where we see it being transformational. Another good one was network monitoring. Obviously the network generates just tons of, with streaming telemetry, tons of information. So with that, you can detect using, ML has been for a long time pretty good at saying, hey, we're starting to see signs in the network that you're going to have a card failure here in a minute. You should go look at this card. You're seeing, spike in demand in this part of the network. You should start to route around it. But what's exciting for us is basically taking the ML where you had to really be pretty explicit about what you wanted the ML to do and how you wanted it to work and how you wanted it to optimize using a new toolkit of AI where you can be much more, show me some insights, tell me about this, help me explain, be more interactive with how you can do things like churn management and really monitoring the network. So we think there's tons of opportunity there. There's tons of challenges too. I mean, your streaming telemetry data generates gobs and gobs of data. And the where you store that data is not necessarily going to be with the co-resident with the best generative AI engine to tell you what to do with it. So how do you get the data from where it's stored to the right sort of generative AI? So we think that there's certainly opportunity, but there's also big challenges too. And well, obviously in those challenges we see opportunity, but there are challenges for sure.
Kevin.
Yeah, and I'll kind of build on that, right? I think if we look, AI is not new. I'm sure Dan and Bill, you'll say you've been using AI in your business for a very long period of time for things around predictive use cases, anomaly detection, clustering capabilities, et cetera. And I think now every event you go to, there's a session like this on the transformative power of AI, and you mentioned ChatGPT, and it's because of the generative aspects that have really come to the forefront over the last, I'll call it 11 months, right? Call it November last year when we really started to see the emergence of generative AI. And I think the reason we're having these conversations is because I think these guys will also tell you that for the last 5 to 7 years that they've been using AI, it's been restricted to ML engineers and data scientists. And what's happened with generative AI is we've democratized the capabilities and we've extended it to developers to embed directly in their software. We've extended it to business owners directly. And the new language of being able to program AI is natural language, right? What's come with generative AI from a use case perspective is the ability to understand human intent. I think you phrased it in a couple of ways from a questions perspective. And the emergent property of no longer being restricted to answering questions only on a very specific use case in which it was trained. Right? And I think when you combine those two use cases, I think you had some great examples that you called out there, but it's everything from, you mentioned employee productivity, it's IT, it's HR, it's legal and contracting, it's systems integration and SOW generation, right? Really starting to look at the ability to ingest images, text, videos, output, generate image, text, videos, but also be able to answer questions of both that ingest and outgest. And I think that capability is why we're talking about this as transformative.
So Rick, products and services that you see coming on the market in the near term, kind of give us a taste of what is coming to the market quickly.
So I've got a couple of slides. Maybe we can bring them up just for context. Add a little visuals here. You know, nobody wants to see our mugs there for the entire session. So I did mention around productivity being an area of investment, right? So as Kevin mentioned, back in November, ChatGPT was released. Essentially, the genie was out of the bottle for generative AI, and it really allowed anyone, not just developers through APIs, but anyone now to go and discover how generative AI could certainly make them more productive, right? And so I'm not going to admit to anything, but I may or may not have written some love letters to my wife of 30 years using this tool. And one thing that you can do, actually, the better your prompt is, the more information you can provide these large language models, the better the output's going to be. And it is pretty stinking amazing, right? So if you haven't tried it, certainly try ChatGPT and you'll be amazed. But again, the beauty of that is that you can now see how it can, again, seemingly reason through text. It can provide really, really great output. It could summarize, provide essentially what an analyst would do. Hey, here's 10,000 pages of text, go and give me an abstract. And so it's really, really good at those types of workloads. Now again, from a productivity standpoint, wow, okay, I can really start using this in my day-to-day life. What we've done is we've infused this generative AI capability, much like ChatGPT, inside of all of the Office applications that you're likely using today. And so with the Microsoft Copilot capabilities, for example, if you're using Teams as your web conferencing tool, now you can have a tool, a Copilot, that essentially provides great notes on every meeting that you have. It can summarize all the meetings. It can create action items as to what's happening through the meeting, and so forth. And again, very, very lightweight. It basically acts on your behalf. If you're using Excel is a very, very powerful tool. However, most people use less than 10% of the capabilities of the tool because it's just so broad, it requires a lot of expertise. Let's say you have a worksheet full of sales data. Now you can use natural language as your interface to go and describe what you want from the sales data. Give me the greatest insights per month. And Copilot can go and create, for example, a pivot chart, pivot table based on that data, which you can continue to refine by using natural language. So in that sense, as Kevin also mentioned, natural language is becoming the predominant user experience, user interface to these applications, right? And you're actually going to start seeing a lot of the user interface start to be pared down and language to start to replace it, whether it's your voice or whether it's you typing through text. And that's pretty amazing. And so Copilot capabilities are absolutely awesome. But when I look at the venerable phone, it truly hasn't changed all that much in the last few decades. Yes, in the last 50 years, we've gone from fixed to mobile, and so now we all carry our phones with us. That's a tremendous innovation, probably the greatest in the last 50 years or so. Chip, you may remember the crank phones when you still have an operator, because you're getting up to that age now. You probably remember that. However,
the party line.
these products haven't changed, right? I mean, a voice call is a voice call is a voice call, right? You pick up a phone. The greatest innovation is that press send to actually dial the number, right? That's not innovation, right? Why don't we now begin to look at AI capabilities and start infusing that into our voice services, right? How can we create new services, new voice services, and really create the next generation of applications that telcos can monetize, right? One other example of the Copilot capability is I wanted a picture of an old phone with an exploding brain above it. Well, I couldn't find one on the internet, but guess what? I described it, and PowerPoint was able to create this picture for me. So anyway, I digress. Just going to go through a couple of the things that we see some telcos already beginning to explore, and you'll hear some exciting announcements in the next few months. And again, this is very approachable. Anybody can do this, and I'll describe a means as to how you can do this. But the reality is that you can begin to reimagine PSTN services, begin to reimagine your voice services, so they're actually being more like the Teams example that I presented to you a few minutes ago. And it all starts with that real-time transcript, right? If you can do speech to text, based on an active phone call that's going on, you can do all sorts of amazing things. First, that transcript itself is immensely valuable to a lot of your subscribers, a lot of your consumers and your customers, right? If you can now store it securely in a locker, you can index it, you can make it searchable, you can make an action process to consumers, mostly through what channel? The phone. Right? So why can't we do a better job at preventing, Grandma Sally from losing her life savings to a scammer, that's somewhere else in the world? Huge potential for AI to be able to provide value in there. And then lastly, around voice assistants. This is an area that I think is going to grow tremendously, right? Because you can start creating all sorts of, maybe a small business assistant for your plumber, right? They only have 3 employees. They can't hire a full-time manager or assistant to answer the phone, take appointments, and so forth. You can create those types of experiences with AI, and again, bolt them onto your carrier network, to your voice service, and now you're charging, $15, $30 a month for this service that's, very sorely needed by, some of these small companies. And just a quick little video as to what that would look like. And I don't think there's probably no audio here. But as you can imagine, you can, probably not going to be a good video without the audio, but you can imagine that there's...
On Thursday afternoon.
Perfect.
Certainly. Is 2 p.m. or 4 p.m. better for you?
2 p.m. at his office works for me.
Thank you. I've booked that for you.
And that's an example from one of our partners called Norwood Systems, who actually is using the OpenAI models to basically create these types of experiences that telcos can now go and resell, right? You have a personal assistant in this case, can listen to your problems, understands the basics of your industry, say plumbing, can respond to some pretty easy questions around what may be wrong, and of course can schedule appointments, all on your behalf, and then you don't necessarily need to hire a full-time person for that. Another one would be like a call screener type of use case, right? So where now you're addressing some of those fraud issues that I mentioned a few minutes ago. So huge opportunity for telcos to start monetizing their network in better ways by, again, infusing AI through their voice network.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I do like the telco to techco, so we'll just say techco from now on. Kevin, from Google, what you see coming into the market?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think where we've been focused probably over the last 3 to 5 years, and kind of the forefront of conversational AI has been the contact center, right? And it's because contact centers and telcos are some of the nastiest places on earth. NPS from an industry perspective is certainly near bottom, right, compared to other industries, and anything we can do to optimize costs by either offloading calls or essentially giving agents superpowers for being able to more effectively answer calls, get to remedy, reduce average handling time, reduce total volume at top of funnel, all of those things I think have been top of mind. But I think conversational AI is broken outside the contact center at this point. Right? It's more about how do I talk to my data, how do I talk to my systems, and how do I talk to my machines. I mentioned a number of different types of organizations inside of techcos, I guess now, that are essentially doing this, right? We see contract management and understanding and aligning contract expiration to planning windows by going in and inspecting and making all of your contracts queryable and conversational. We see use cases on the operational side in terms of break-fix resolution, getting better and faster at doing that type of thing. We see use cases...
Go into that a little bit more. What do you mean by break-fix?
Yeah, I think a couple of different ways, right? When we talk about ingesting very large corpus of data and being able to index against that data, make that data searchable and conversational, right? What do I have? I have all of my network logs. I have all of my best practices that have been built by different operations teams, and I can score those based on who's the most capable and has resolved the most issues from an operational perspective. I have all my trouble tickets and support tickets that were open, and all of these things become indexable and searchable. So now if I'm an operator and I see an outage, I see an issue, I can query against these systems, and I can even get to be predictive against these systems to get in the hands of an operations person. What's the best way to resolve this? Where have I seen this before? What types of unintended consequences or add-on effects is this happening, would happen as a result of this? Right? I think you can integrate it into pre-planning as well to understand before I commit something to production, what are the likely impacts of that from a launch to production perspective. We see these use cases now. We see it chat-oriented, right? Certainly I can go search a whole set of documents, and we all have our own internal search capabilities, and they produce hundreds of results. Right? But when I make it conversational, when I make it multi-turn, when I can ask questions, get responses, and then query again to refine my answers, I think it becomes very powerful to reach resolution faster.
So Dan and Bill, as you think through, and you talked a little bit of a use case on the permitting, what you can assemble to hopefully speed or streamline what you have to do to deploy your network. On the network side, what are y'all using? How do y'all use AI, or what do you see in the near term of what you will do in AI application?
I think it's much more than just on the network side. So for those who sort of know Zayo a little bit, we have the world's biggest, funkiest version of Salesforce.com maybe in the world. Like it does backflips. But this huge monolith that we're actually we've hit the scale that we need to actually get more bespoke solutions. So we're decomposing our business, and every part that we're looking at, we're taking quote and order, generate bill, resolve trouble ticket. We're decomposing our business into each of those. Every single one of those, we're looking at what AI can do to make it be better, easier, faster, cheaper. Because the reality is no one wants to be on the phone with a telco for 2 hours to figure out what's my circuit ID and how do you tie that together with 47 other things. They want to be able to find that data themselves. So we're taking our business, we're looking at every single business process. So what's the business process? How can you automate it with software? What's the data? What's the security? And how can you use AI to wrap all of that together to actually reinvent what the experience should even be like? So we're lucky that we're embarking on this journey now. It's a daunting journey, but we're embarking on the journey now when I like your analogy where the interface shouldn't be, show me a network map and I can drill in 47 times, figure out what I need. You'd be like, show me my network in Indianapolis. And it brings up the network in Indianapolis. You can be like, well, I'm seeing network issues here, and they can show you the devices that are there. Just the intuitive nature of how you do all of these interactions, but it's not just at the network. It starts from quote and order all the way to bill presentation. And so what we're doing is again, while we're overhauling our back office that was previously relying on Salesforce, we're taking each process and saying, how can we use AI to reimagine how that's done? And it's a better user experience, but it's also cheaper to deliver. So it works for everybody.
Dan?
Let me kind of take the discussion up a level or down a level, depending on your perspective. So we've talked a lot about kind of using AI in operations. I want to talk a little bit about kind of the impact of AI on the infrastructure side. So we're an infrastructure company. I always tell people we dig ditches and put plastic and glass in the ground and then sell it to people to then build the services on top. We're not a service provider. I spent a good deal of my career doing that and choose not to do that again. So we're an infrastructure provider. So we build a physical asset. I always kind of kid around, kind of the long haul fiber is the tail of the dog. The dog is data centers and data center location. And one of the things we think and talk about a lot these days is, with AI and the much higher compute and thus power intensity of operations, since data center drives a lot of our business, and the thing that is becoming more rare these days is available power capacity to put these now very power intensive buildings. Some people say 10x maybe what it was pre-AI don't know. It's certainly higher. I don't know what the right multiple is. Data center location is really going to be driven by available power generation capacity. It takes 10 to 15 years to stand up new power generation capacity, if you can even get it done, 7 to 10 years for power transmission. So think about that. As we're all talking about AI, building new, very power-intensive data center locations, and that's driven by where the power is. What we've got today is about what we've got for the next 10 years. So, as we're running out of places and data centers need power, and they need long-haul fiber convergence points. So we're running out of existing fiber convergence points where there's available power. Now the available power left is out where there isn't fiber. That's what drives our business. And so I know there are a number of people in the room here who are, kind of create and operate fiber networks. It's just a different impact of AI, very much at the infrastructure level where, okay, let's say there's a place in Wyoming with a lot of available power capacity, and yet long haul is rather limited there. That's where we come in, and that's what's going to drive, I think, a lot of us more at the infrastructure level in our telco ecosystem versus the application level.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think a couple of things, right? 10x maybe. I think we have to meet in the middle, right? In addition to how do we continue to mature power capabilities and decentralize power capabilities, we also have to make this infrastructure more efficient. Right, so we're going to see a whole new evolution on the hardware and infrastructure side to be more efficient at machine learning and AI use cases. But I would also say that we've been so wrapped around as a telecom industry, this conversation of edge computing and the need to decentralize, because when we decentralize, we get to lower latency. But an inverse answer to that same problem is more fiber. Right? I don't have to decentralize if I have more direct fiber routes to be able to get to core data centers. And I think a great example, right, if we look at, go back to Google Next, which was only a handful of weeks ago, we had Wendy's presenting on how we're using generative AI for drive-through menu ordering. So essentially replacing the drive-through agent. And I know we talked a little bit, Rick showed a slide and talked about speech to text as the foundation for a lot of this. And if we think about a use case like that, what are we doing? We're sending speech back to the cloud. We're doing speech to text. We're doing inferencing against that. We're understanding and looking against a Wendy's menu what the actual order should be. We're crafting a response. We're taking it and putting it from text back to speech, and we're sending it back across long haul fiber.
We're putting the networks where we think they're going to matter, going out to new locations where there's lots of power, doing things like cloud, making it really easy to get data into and out of multiple clouds, because it's going to be a multi-cloud world. So I think the answer is we don't know, but I think when you really scale back, be like, it's going to require tons of data, and there's going to be tons of trapped value, that those are the fundamentals you want. That's going to be a tide that raises a lot of boats, and we just got to be prepared.
Yeah, I would add to that, right? I think if we go back even before the iPhone, go back to BlackBerry, and I use that because there's a great new movie on BlackBerry if you haven't seen it. And one of the scenes in that movie is when you launch too many BlackBerries on the network, it crashed it, right? When iPhone launched, right, it brought down networks. It had so much demand, there was so much demand on the network capacity. And I think as we enter this new world of AI, yes, data, horizontal data for machine learning and training and getting data into these AI models is going to be exponentially bigger, and building cloud-to-cloud communications and rethinking, call it peering a little bit to be much, much larger capacity is part of it. But I also think AI is a new operating system, right? When we kind of think about what happened with the iPhone, it was a fundamental shift in the way we did computing. And it launched an entire new operating system, a new set of applications and ecosystem around it, a new set of services and expectations and users, right? The desktop slowly dwindled. Mobile OS is by far number one, right? So now you have iOS, Android, et cetera. But I think the same will happen here. You're going to see new services built natively on top of AI. Where I mentioned the democratization of this, it's across the board, right? It's going to be new consumer applications. It's going to be new enterprise applications. If I wrap my head around your Salesforce commentary and think about this through a world of BI, right? No one comes to BI for a dashboard. They come to BI with a question, right? So why am I giving them a dashboard? Why aren't I waiting to generate a dashboard when I know what their question is? right? And all of this processing power, right, will live in the data center, but how I get this into the hands of consumers will be dependent on building out the right and robust network.
You know, I feel like we're just touching the tip of the iceberg in this conversation, and we're running out of time. We could talk about cybersecurity, we could talk about critical infrastructure, and should there be higher standards or certification, safeguards built into that. But with the time that we have left, y'all can talk about any of those elements, but also, to the best of your ability, if we were to reconvene here 2-3 years from now, what does the world look like? What is the future that AI will begin to change in our operations, our networks, and our day-to-day life?
Well, I'll likely be sending my robot here to represent me, so I won't actually be here, Chip. But no, it's certainly an amazing, and it's not new technology, as Kevin mentions, right? It's been around for years, but what is new is the annoyance of these generative AI models as kind of being the new way as to how we'll reason through massive amount of data. To your point, though, with regards to how are there potential standards that we can leverage? From a technology standpoint, there's just too much innovation that's happening to try to I would say thwart the potential innovations with technology standards. So there's a lot going on, and certainly the vendors are doing a good job at proposing models and so forth. But I think where we need some work is around regulatory standards to ensure the responsible use of these technologies by both the vendors that are creating the platforms, the technologies, the tools, as well as the consumers that are using this technology, right? There's just an amazing potential for nefarious use of this stuff, right? And that's why, to a certain extent, we're really promoting that telcos look at leveraging this technology, for example, to help consumers stay safe, right? You have to fight fire with fire. Whenever new emerging technology comes along, guess who the first users of that technology has to be? It's not necessarily the good guys, right? And so you have voice printing now. You have the capability of, with 15 seconds or less of your voice, that's captured. Now you can have a bot that mimics your voice, sounds like you, and now can be used into these fraudulent types of calls. And so, huge potential challenge there. So, absolutely the need for some regulation. When you embark in your journey around AI, do so responsibly, right? Think of what tenets you value with regards to ethical use, responsible use of AI, transparent, accountable use of this technology. Work with us, vendors like Google, like Microsoft. We recently founded the Frontier Model Forum, which is a way to provide some guidance as to how you use these large language models for good and responsible use. And so those are some guidelines that I would leave you with.
Yeah, I think it's been touched on a couple times. We just have a few seconds left. Efficiency. We're going to have a lot more compute, a lot more storage, and a lot more transport. And yet ARPUs for products, probably aren't going to, shoot up and to the right immediately. So we're going to have to actually spend more CapEx to put more of those things out there without a ton maybe in the near term of new revenue. So how do we become more efficient? Some of it is putting the workloads where they belong. When you're building the models, put it in the very remote, very power efficient data centers. When you kind of want low latency services, move that to the edge. All that presumes data centers and fiber is much more ubiquitous than today. So I think that's where we're going as far as more ubiquity on those things.
Yeah, Chip, maybe I'll just add one thing, and I notice a whole bunch of zeros, so I'll be mindful of that. If we would have convened 2 years ago, right, we would have talked about how AI was foundational for efficiency, how AI was great at repetitive tasks, at things that we already had a really good understanding of doing, and it just wasn't worth human mind power to continue doing, right? I think where we're talking today and what surprised, I would think, everyone with things like ChatGPT is the fact that AI is all of a sudden here and creative. It's producing original, it's generating new things that hadn't been done before, it's learning on its own, it's developing, call it cognition to some degree that didn't exist before. So if we're here 2 years from now, I think the shifts that we'll see will now be subtle. It will be absorbing this new technology and understanding the power of it into every one of our jobs, right? It's not going to replace humans in what we do, but humans who understand how to use generative AI in their daily jobs will replace humans who don't.
And with that, both productive and we'll say positive end, I really want to thank y'all. This is, this has come onto the scene recently. It is, another, I think, milestone benchmark in our industry and in human technology. And as it continues to hopefully make life better for the most part, and as we think through how to protect against the threats and the risk of it, mitigate that. This panel represents some of the leading thinkers and companies, and so I'm very grateful that y'all came and met with us and talked with us and shared with us what is here and what's to come. So thank y'all very much.